It didn't arrive through the front door of Buckingham Palace. There was no press briefing, no announcement, no warning. According to sources familiar with the matter, it arrived as a sealed internal report marked restricted, circulated only among a handful of senior palace officials. And when King Charles finished reading it, witnesses say he didn't speak. He simply closed the folder and asked one question: who else has seen this? For years, the public story has been simple. Meghan Markle was the outsider. The palace was the problem. Every conflict, every fracture, every fallout was framed as tradition versus progress. But insiders say that narrative is now collapsing under the weight of a document the palace never expected to exist. Because this report doesn't accuse Meghan of being misunderstood. It accuses her of something far more dangerous: strategic deception. To understand why this report is so explosive, you have to go back to the early days, before Netflix, before court cases, before the world picked sides. When Meghan entered royal life, she wasn't just marrying a prince, she was entering a system governed by precedent, disclosure, and trust. Every conversation, every agreement, every promise mattered, and according to palace legal analysts, that trust may have been compromised from the very beginning. The report allegedly outlines a pattern that senior aides had quietly suspected but could never prove: that Meghan's private assurances to the palace did not match her parallel communications outside it. On paper, she agreed to certain constraints. Off paper, she was allegedly preparing alternatives, not emotionally, logistically. Sources describe the document as a timeline reconciliation file. It compares internal palace emails, legal correspondence, and third-party contracts that were never disclosed during the Megxit negotiations. The conclusion is chilling. According to the report, Meghan was not reacting to palace pressure. She was positioning herself for exit long before the public conflict ever began. This wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. The most damaging section of the report focuses on what insiders call the dual-track strategy. While palace officials believed they were negotiating boundaries around privacy and duty, external arrangements were allegedly being finalized with media partners, publishers, and intermediaries. Not after the split, before it. Royal lawyers reviewing the report allegedly flagged discrepancies in dates, signatures, and non-disclosure language, contracts that should not have existed under the terms Meghan had agreed to, financial projections that assumed a post-royal narrative years in advance, and communications that suggested Harry was not fully briefed on the scope of what was being planned. This is where the report crosses from embarrassment into betrayal. Because under royal protocol, negotiations with the crown must be conducted in good faith. Parallel negotiations that materially benefit one party while undermining the institution are considered a breach of trust, not criminal, but catastrophic. And when King Charles reviewed the final section, the one marked Impact Assessment, sources say his concern wasn't public opinion, it was precedent. The report allegedly warns that allowing this behavior to go unaddressed would create a roadmap for future members of the royal family to weaponize access, extract value, and exit without consequence. In other words, if this stands, the monarchy becomes a brand farm. That is why the reaction inside the palace has been described as surgical. No leaks, no denials, no counterattacks. Instead, quiet preparation. Legal consultations, constitutional review, and a reassessment of titles that were granted under assumptions that may no longer hold. Prince Harry, according to insiders, was briefed after the report was finalized. The meeting was not emotional, it was procedural. He was shown timelines, he was shown documents, and then he was asked a question that reportedly left him silent. When did you know? Those close to Harry say this moment has forced a reckoning, not with the media, not with his family, but with the possibility that the story he defended so fiercely may have been incomplete, that the rebellion he embraced may have been built on information selectively presented to him. As for Meghan, sources say she is aware the report exists. What she doesn't know is how far the palace is willing to go. The report does not recommend public exposure, it recommends containment. Quiet corrections, structural safeguards, and, if necessary, a redefinition of future royal engagement rules that permanently close the door she once walked through. This isn't about punishment, it's about insulation. The monarchy has survived scandals, abdications, and wars, but what it cannot survive is the normalization of internal deception, and according to those who have read the report, that line may already have been crossed. The question now isn't whether this report will leak, it's whether its conclusions have already changed everything behind closed doors. Because once trust is withdrawn at that level, there is no appeal process, only consequences.